pressed on with that American creed. Yes, we can.
Yes, together we will make America better.
Welcome to the next episode of Unintelligent Intellectuals. Now, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm not what one might call a sports guy. I don't follow stats or refuse to pay extra to sit in uncomfortable seats in a crowd of people with pricey concessions and a worse view of what I would see on TV, which I don't watch in the first place. I mean, it just doesn't excite me. I mean, cheering on a designated team based on location, as much as it allows people to practice loyalty, dedication, and express their passion, I find it to be dangerously tribal. I get it. Mostly for fun, the gang mentality tends to manifest. The danger is present, since when emotions are high and lines are drawn, the possibility for conflict is elevated. Though, to be fair, it rarely happens. Despite all this, I get it. Though I don't watch the game like that, but when I do, I get excited because I get emotionally invested. You know, I'll watch the game with friends who are all about a particular team. Because even though I'm not a sports guy, I can vibe off of the excitement that they're exuding. You know, sometimes I'll poke fun and root against their team to rile them up, to see them a little upset, frustrated. Makes me giggle a little bit. Maybe they're getting a little upset, you know, their team isn't doing too well, or maybe it's something important like the playoffs or Super Bowl, and I'll just take that moment and I'll root for their team. Now, often we're joined by a bunch of other friends or just strangers when we're sitting in a green turtle or whatever, and who genuinely root for one team over another because that's who they care about. Right before or during and after those moments, I start to notice something. Despite the divisions that football tends to breed, its power to bring people together is way stronger than any other force opposed to it. When I remember the Titans coming together despite their strong divisions, I realized that the Gridiron Gang encompasses way more than just one team. Sometimes it even includes the Water Boy, and Captain Insano shows no mercy. When facing the Giants, he doesn't quit until he has nothing left. And the part we love is seeing any team on any given Sunday fight for every single inch like it's life or death. Unfortunately, one man had that fight in a way that we're not used to seeing on the field. As terrible as that moment was, and as critical as his condition is, the way that we reacted to that moment showcased the truest spirit of football, a unifying power across all divisions that pays great reverence to the struggle of and for life. At this moment, I would like to add my voice to the plethora of already existing prayers for this man's recovery. There are some voices that diverge from the collective.
Intentionally, what exactly did T. Higgins do last night to Hamlin?
Well, right before the tackle, he lowers his helmet and he kind of throws his body into his chest. He's standing up because he's thinking he's got to chase T. Higgins at an angle to make a tackle. So he didn't expect T. Higgins to launch his body back into him. It's one of those things. A lot of times you sit as a linebacker, unblocked, unengaged running back comes through the hole, and he knows that contact's coming, so he lowers his helmet, and you can't get underneath him, so he's able to get into you, and your chest is exposed.
Now, at this moment, Bart Scott is purely describing the scene and as it happened from the perspective of a professional football player. He's explaining moment by moment, scene by scene, what might have been going on through the minds of the individual players and why they made the moves that they did. He's not assigning any kind of blame towards any individual person or indicating that anybody has done anything incorrectly. He's purely describing what has happened. Now again, I don't know this guy. I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch football. But the way that he described the scene as it happened and me going back to look at the scene, I can understand that he's just being descriptive right here and answering Stephen A. Smith's question. Now, Stephen A. Smith's question, the way that he's framed it, will put a lot of people on the defensive. Because his question is, describe to me what T. Higgins has done to Damar Hamlin. Describe to me this scene. Now, that question is framed in such a way, though I don't believe that he intended it to, that would imply that T. Higgins has done something to Damar Hamlin.
So they've taken that out of the game, but they don't really regulate it as much as possible. I expect the league will be a lot more vigilant when it comes to that and using that penalty.
Now, I believe at this moment, this is what everybody's responding to. This is what everybody is really upset about. The framing of the question has already put a lot of people on alert. A lot of alarm bells are already ringing off, and people feel very sensitive in this moment. Though he may believe that he is still describing the events that have unfolded without casting blame on anybody, he fails to realize or the implications of what he said and how wrong his claims are. After describing the event itself, he goes on to say that they have taken this out of the game because it's dangerous. Well, he doesn't say that. Doesn't say it's dangerous. But he implies that it has been taken out of the game because it's dangerous. And the implication comes in because, one, they've taken it out, and two, because of what's happened to Damar Hamlin. The implication is that T. Higgins has made this decision. Damar Hamlin has suffered as a result. He goes on to imply that he believes that it's not regulated enough and that he believes that it will be regulated more in the future. Now, as some of you know, there have been a lot of injuries that have been linked to football having to do with the effects on the brain, with trauma on the brain. There is a rule about helmets, which I believe he's referring to. Lowering the head to initiate contact with the helmet is a foul. Players cannot use their helmets to butt, spear, or ram an opponent. Now, the reason behind that is because of the traumatic or the potential for traumatic brain injury that occurs or has the possibility of occurring when utilizing your brain underneath the safety of a helmet in order to push yourself forward. You might gain that inch. You might gain that inch. But the potential damage to the brain has been determined to be more catastrophic than fighting for that inch in that way. That is why they taken that out of the rules for football. That is the rule. I believe that is what Bart Scott is referring to. That is not what happened here. Unless he is arguing, the only way that you would be able to connect that rule to what has happened here is if you make the claim that T. Higgins intended to use his helmet to spear or ram through the defense. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know more about football, but the one element of football that I happen to take a liking to outside of movies and playing it myself has to do with this specific issue. And I don't believe that Bart Scott understands what he said wrong. I believe that he's gotten defensive because he's used to a bunch of people attacking him and he thinks that everybody's out to get him. Let me show you a tweet that supports what I just said. In a world of overnight viral wannabes, people do anything to be seen. I had my time in the light. This is an example of a journalist I never heard of clout chasing. There's 2 more segments on this show where I blame no one. He'll never post that because it doesn't help his narrative. Nowhere in this tweet, nowhere in previous tweets or in subsequent tweets does he acknowledge the difference between the policy in which he's, I believe, attempting to claim. I mean, maybe it's unfair. Maybe it's unfair to ask for that from him because he's in a position where he believes he's under fire. And he very much is. When people have attacked him, they haven't said directly that he was wrong about this policy, he was incorrect, and he implied T. Higgins was doing this, and people were on the attack. People were saying he should be fired. This guy's an idiot. What is he talking about? How dare he? So I can understand his defensiveness. I can understand how people feel when this segment went up, and overall, because of these two things, both parties are talking past each other. And I think in order for both sides to understand the other, we both have to be open enough to dare to assume that the other person is not the enemy.
Couple of things. Number one, before I even answer that question, let me look into the camera and tell these folks in America to calm down as it pertained to Bart Scott yesterday. People are walking around acting like Bart Scott was in his explanation of the play that ended up injuring almost fatally Hamlin, that Bart Scott was alluding to T. Higgins doing something like that on purpose. He did no such thing. That is not true. That is a lie. Okay? Nobody would be that insensitive, for crying out loud, especially somebody like Bart Scott. That is false. I specifically asked him to explain what transpired on the play, Doggy, because he was talking about how T. Higgins got the ball and was running with it, and then at the last second, just created that kind of contact. It was a football play, and Hamlin tackled him. That's all that was going on. He was given an explanation. That's all he was. He wasn't blaming T. Higgins in any way. He wasn't questioning his intent in any way. And for people out there to say otherwise is ludicrous. That is not what Bart Scott said on this show yesterday. That's an absolute lie. So I just wanted to get that out the way, to come to my man's defense, who was explaining to me, because I asked for an explanation for him to crystallize the football play that actually took place on the field, because he was talking about how they'll probably eliminate you as a runner, putting your head into a defender's chest or anything like that with your helmet. They'd probably outlaw that. Even though it's in the rule book now, they'll probably really focus on that rule moving forward. Now,
Stephen A. Smith is in a similar position to Bart Scott. He works with him. They're probably under the fire by the same groups of people, and so I understand his loyalty to his friend, his fellow coworker, someone he could relate to, someone who he could relate to the attacks to. That being said, let's break down what he just said. Again, calming people, his demand for people to calm down, I can understand. I think people's reaction to Bart Scott, again, was a little over the top. And again, I understand their emotions, but in an attempt to try to stop talking past each other, I believe he was trying to make the appeal to these people whose feelings were elevated in the moment. And so when he's asking people to calm down, optimistically, I believe he's trying to tell people to take a moment to step back and analyze what was said in the segment, as he goes on to explain his friend's intentions. And I think he did a good job of doing so. But again, what people are upset about aren't his intentions. People aren't upset with a thought crime. Or at least I don't believe so. I don't believe that is what people are reacting to. People aren't looking on the screen and using their psychic abilities to try to ascertain what Bart Scott was thinking and attacking that. I think they're attacking his words. I think they're attacking what he said. And I think that's something that Stephen A. Smith himself has failed to understand. He goes on to explain that Bart Scott didn't directly blame T. Higgins, which is true. He didn't directly, explicitly blame T. Higgins, but he has implicitly blamed T. Higgins by implying that he's used, again, a move that is outlawed, that is not okay to use. Putting your helmet down and perhaps knocking into your defender's chest, aka ramming somebody with your helmet. By describing that action, which is not probably outlawed, as he has said, which is definitely outlawed and is definitely in the rule book. You could argue about whether it's been addressed or not, or whether the league is doing a good job of addressing that or not. But that move, that instance, has absolutely no implication in what happened between Damar and T. Higgins. And so as a response to him, I understand him asking people to calm down, but I do believe that he's wrong in implying that T. Higgins did an illegal move, because by failing to acknowledge or by failing to address that T. Higgins didn't do an illegal move, or that what Bart Scott has said has absolutely nothing to do with what happened, you are implicitly blaming T. Higgins for Damar Hamlin's condition. Another voice that has diverged from the collective is Skip Bayless. I think in Skip's instance it's different because I believe that there's a focus on his intentions. I think when it comes to Skip, a lot of people are focusing on what might be lying underneath the surface, not particularly the exact words of what he said. And because people have such a negative view of Skip because of his behavior, which is widely interpreted to be disrespectful, childish, and unnecessary, people interpret the words that he either writes or says in most instances in the worst possible way.
We're talking about yesterday. How did he look yesterday?
No,
Gets an ass?
No. I got the floor. Because all you do is bring up those 11 games. All you do is go back to talk about when he was a rookie and won 7 games. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about because I got the floor. Baker Mayfield is dead last in 2022 in QBR.
Blah, blah,
He's
blah.
dead last. I don't care. Blah, 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 blah. He's 57.8. He's 33rd in completion percentage. You going to let me talk? Because that's what you do.
If you'll stay on point on questions.
You never stay on point.
Okay, I'm about to stay on point.
You're not going to get on point until I'm done talking.
Okay, all right.
That's right.
Spew all your hate.
I'm going to spew it
your
all.
Your Baker hate. Spew it.
17.8, because all you talk about, you're uncertain about Justin Herbert, but you get on the floor for this clown. He's a bum. He's trash, and you know it. And every time you bring him up, I'm going to let the world know exactly what he is.
Oh, you
He's
and your 4 Twitter followers.
Don't worry about hold on.
Yeah, okay.
You talk about Twitter, and we come out here and discuss topics that you tweeted. So don't give me about that Twitter stuff. You can talk about my followers all you want, but I got you dead to right, and you see how he do America? He talk about my Twitter followers. That's what I know I got it. And I'm going to continue to go.
All right.
He's 187.
Tell me when it's my turn.
It's not your turn.
Okay.
He's Phil Football Focus got it graded 37%.
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, go ahead.
Blah, blah, blah. You done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you. Whew, finally.
That was a clip from Undisputed, a show hosted by Shannon and Skip. Now, Shannon is over there aggressively talking his points and taking the turn-based style of conversation. You know, very RPG-ish of him. Maybe he's a Final Fantasy fan. And Skip is over there, blah, 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 with the interruptions. Whew, finally, so yeah, it could be interpreted as disrespectful. It could be like that. But it could also be playful banter. That could just be how they are. That could just be clickbaity. That could just be entertaining, and that's the way they interact, and that's the way they have fun. So I mean, what do I know? I don't watch these guys. This is a clip that I searched for. So maybe this was the one instance, one of maybe one or two, that they've gone back and forth, but it's nothing malicious intended. And maybe there's no disrespect there. Maybe they really do respect each other. Maybe they talked about this offhand. Maybe it was unscripted. And then after it took place, they all laughed about it because it made for great television, made for great clicks, got great views. Who knows? I don't. I will not pretend to. All I'm saying is that this is the beginning of what I determine to be. This is the beginning of what I see to be disrespectful. But let's continue.
How convinced are you Tom Brady's going to win the Super Bowl?
Okay, I picked him to win it. I'm not backing off.
Well, put something on it.
Well, what do you mean put my pride on it? I put my pride.
That's what I would do.
Who did you pick? You picked the Rams and the Chargers, okay?
And the only difference is everybody knows the Rams are bad, but they don't want to say Tom Brady is playing just as bad as Matt
Stafford. Off.
Skip, they're in the Tampa division. They're in the worst division in football.
Good. Are they going to be in the playoffs? Help me out.
Skip,
I need you to
That's your argument.
Okay,
That's your argument.
What do you mean that's my argument?
Your argument is that they're going to be in the playoffs. Is Tom Brady playing bad? Okay. Yes or no?
Yes, he played poorly yesterday.
What do you mean yesterday?
Okay,
all year.
But you're giving him 100% of the blame?
Because
that's just, you have no objectivity. It's just straight Brady hate. Wait a minute.
Can't speak on the Rams or Tom Brady's stats from personal knowledge or experience, but based on what Shannon and Skip both agreed to, it doesn't look like Brady has been doing as well as he has in previous years. Who's to say who's to blame or what will happen in the playoffs? But that's not the point. People can disagree, and there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. And thus far, that's all that has transpired. Until...
just straight hate by a guy who's jealous that he is still playing at a high level at 45 when you had to stop at 35.
Skip, that's what you do.
That's the point.
That's what you do. Every time I call something into question, I'm jealous.
No,
Skip, I did what I
never
did.
said you were jealous of Baker Mayfield.
Skip.
Blah, blah, blah. As you recall, no, he didn't say that. He didn't say that he was jealous. All he said was blah, blah, blah. Just kept intentionally interrupting him. And then when he was finally over and turned over to his side, whew, finally, phew, very mature. And again, possibly just being playful. But let's continue.
What I did, you make it seem like I was a bum. I'm in the effing Hall of Fame.
Okay,
I got 3 Super Bowls.
So what?
So what?
He's way better than you were.
I'm better than you.
Better.
I got to see what you do. You take personal shots.
No,
for the
I don't take personal shots. You started it.
I don't take personal shots. You started it. He's implying both. If he doesn't take personal shots, then what does it matter who started it? But he did take a personal shot. To be fair, you could argue that Shannon has taken a personal shot at Brady. Not based off of his character, but based off of his statistics and his ability to play football, which is essentially what this show is about. Now, he's not comparing himself to Brady. He's purely comparing Brady to Brady in the past. That's what they're speaking on. That's what's taking this long to eke out. And disagreeing on the point is one thing, but they agreed on the point, eventually. The problem is that once they're in agreement, Skip decided to take a personal shot at Shannon, which he started.
You would take a personal shot at me.
I didn't take a personal shot at you.
Wait a minute.
What are you talking about?
You would take a personal
Put your glasses back on.
Cameras rolling or not, a lesser man might have done something about that. Interrupting what someone is saying in order to ask them what are they talking about, it seems a little self-defeatist. Put your fucking glasses back on might be construed as disrespectful in some circles and also constitutes as a personal shot.
Finish. You're willing to take a personal shot at me to say this man is better than me because I say he's playing bad this year?
Well, because you just
Go ahead.
you disrespect him. It's just so.
You
know what? It's beneath your
you
dignity.
You disrespect me to support him.
No, well, I'll support him over anybody because he's the greatest player who ever played your game, and it's by far.
Disagree? No problem. Support the greatest player to ever play the game? Brave stance. Doing so by comparing said player to co-host due to disagreement? Ooh, it's hard to square away. So Shannon sought some clarification. When confronted on the purpose of taking the personal shot, Skip responded with, "But you disrespected him, and it is beneath your dignity." The definition of dignity is the state of being worthy. So let's review Skip's logic. Just pretend I sound like Skip. Shannon, since it's beneath your dignity to disrespect Tom Brady by stating existing stats and making assessments based on such stats, which I, Skip, myself agree with, I felt the need to tear down your dignity, disavowing, undermining your accomplishments, including your Hall of Fame status and 3 Super Bowl rings. Not to mention my obvious eye roll and the "put your fucking glasses back on" comment. Some might find what I said and how I said it to be disrespectful, but it's not. So, sorry that you misunderstood me. With that behavior in mind, these are the series of tweets that he made surrounding the incident. The one in question is the second from the top. Not really in question, but that's the one that a lot of people responded negatively to. Perhaps some people did read everything or follow him and they know his whole intentions, but they were looking for that viral moment. Or perhaps some people were just super pissed at his overall decorum and were frustrated by his focus on the game or looking at things from the perspective of how to move forward with the season as opposed to focusing on Damar Hamlin's health. I myself relate to that level of criticism, especially from somebody who seems so comfortable being as disrespectful as he is when he believes that he's in the right. And it is very difficult to be sympathetic for someone who's genuinely disrespectful, who genuinely feels comfortable participating in such detestable behavior and showcases disgustingly little sympathy when they've done something that affects people in a negative way.
Skip, how are we today?
We've had better days, Jen.
Indeed, indeed. Skip, what was going through your mind during all of this?
Shut up, bitch!
Which I believe was widely misconstrued, misinterpreted. I don't follow what's happening on Twitter. I just tweet. But my boss here at Fox called and said, hey, people are really reacting strongly to your tweet. Maybe you should clarify, which I immediately did.
So let's keep this in mind for a little later on. As far as the tweet or the series of tweets and his explanation go, I don't think he meant to undermine Damar Hamlin's condition. However, put in the greater context of who Skip is and how he's behaved and how other people might feel about what he's said and how he said it, I think it's easy for some to conclude otherwise. Now, we're going to skip ahead to the next episode where Shannon is present and attempts to address some of the speculators on why he didn't show up for this episode. And though not as disrespectful as he's been in previous episodes or in the two out of many that Skip and Shannon have had, the slight disrespect that he exhibited in this episode was enough to certify in many people's minds that they were correct in their assessment of Skip, which, in my opinion, again, I don't think is true. But his slight disrespect in this moment even has Shannon unnerved.
I understand. There's something you want to share this morning.
Good morning, yes.
Morning.
There's been a lot of speculation of why I wasn't on air yesterday, and I won't get into speculation or conjecture or innuendo, but I will say this. In watching that game on Monday night, what happened to Damar Hamlin struck me a little different. As a brotherhood in the NFL, when injuries happen, when we know injuries are a part of the game, I've seen guys suffer ACLs and Achilles tear, but I've never seen anybody have to be revived and fight for their life on the field. So it struck me a little differently because I remember seeing my brother paralyzed on the field temporarily, and he was able to regain focus. Skip tweeted something, and although I disagree with the tweet, and hopefully Skip would take it down, but I didn't want it.
Well, time out. I'm not going to take it down because I stand by what I tweeted.
Skip, let me finish.
All right, okay.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Go ahead, let's go, Jen.
Okay.
I mean, I cannot even get through a monologue without you interrupting me.
Well,
you could have came back. Skip,
well, I thought,
Skip, just let me.
I didn't know you were going to bring up
No,
this.
I was just going to say, Skip, I didn't want to yesterday to get into a situation where Damar Hamlin was the issue. We should have been talking about him and not get into your tweet. That's what I was going to do. But you can't even let me finish my opening monologue without you interrupting.
Okay. I was under the impression you weren't going to bring this up because nobody here had a problem with that tweet.
No. Clearly, the bosses wanted you to offer explanation. So clearly, somebody.
No, they did not have. Nobody.
Let's go, Jen.
But my boss here at Fox called and said, hey, people are really reacting strongly to your tweet. Maybe you should clarify, which I immediately did.
Thoughts and prayers remain with Damar Hamlin.
That's where the focus should have been.
Whether you agree or disagree with the intentionality behind what Skip says his tweet meant or means, of which I happen to agree, his ability, however rare, to be disrespectful and less than honest can objectively be called mistakes.
About to judge Skip Bayless or anybody else for saying the wrong thing. God knows I have. Yes, you got to be sensitive out there. Mental health matters, life matters, human beings' well-being matters. And when you speak, you have to make sure that you're sensitive to everything that you can be sensitive to in articulating your position. Skip can defend himself. I will tell you that I've spent years disagreeing with Skip Bayless. I disagree with him now, and I'm going to disagree with him into the future. I know who he is. I know what he's about. Do I agree with everything he says or how he says it or the timing with which he uses to say things? No. But the flip side to it is that I know that by and large his heart is in the right place, and, you know, people make mistakes.
Someone who makes mistakes like that and can't acknowledge or apologize for their actions is impossible to believe. The reason I believe his intentionality isn't because of what he said. To be honest, his solo show was riddled with many signs of insincerity. I believe those vibes are due to him being forced to address it, which is supported by how upset and dodgy he was when Shannon brought it up. He was deceptively trying to redefine what he has already told us his bosses said in the episode before. Skip strikes me as a guy who loves football. I read somewhere that he boasted about telling his wife that it's more important than she is. I think he felt devastated by what happened to Damar Hamlin. I question whether he prayed for the guy, but I believe he understood the gravity of what happened. Not in relation to Damar Hamlin's life as a human being and the impact on those who love him, but in relation to his life as a football player and how it will affect the team, season, and the game overall. Through this lens, I accept his sincerity. I don't care about football as much as others, or exactly the same as others. I would say most people speaking on this topic, including both Bart Scott and Skip Bayless, have a great reverence for the sport that would eclipse mine. That being said, the only authority I have to present this video with is ignorant criticism. Perhaps my greatest prejudice is the level of faith that I have in myself to understand people and things that I'm exposed to. I don't think anyone is better than me in that. And I don't think I would ever be the best at anything else, no matter how hard I try. That includes marketing, speaking, writing, critiquing, all of it. Skip and Bart have skills and positions that I would never be able to obtain. But they have both made mistakes that they themselves are ignorant to. Maybe as a defense against unnecessary attack. Maybe they're ignorant to it because they're responding to a bunch of people online. A bunch of people that they're not face-to-face with, that they don't interact with on a regular basis in their personal lives. And there's a lot of people out there who at least they perceive to not care about them, or just looking for the viral moment and just trying to make them feel bad. So maybe they're fighting against it. Maybe they're both being defensive against what they perceive to be an unnecessary attack. You know, people in positions like them are constantly being talked to by a group of other people that they have never met in real life, that will never have any real impact in their personal decision making. So it's hard for them to really value what other people have to say. When you're in a position like that a very enviable position, doing things that a lot of people would love to do, you get a lot of envy. You get a lot of pushback. You get a lot of uncomfortable situations where people say a lot of nasty things. And it's easy to perceive or to group all those things together as just hate mail. It's hard to look at that as constructive criticism, especially when it's really negative towards yourself. It's really easy to get bogged down by all the negative shit that other people have to say. So a lot of people, as a defensive mechanism against that, they group all of that, what they perceive to be negative criticism and unfounded criticism, as unnecessary attacks. And the defense against such attacks is just to deny it altogether. I don't believe that Bart meant to blame. I don't believe that Skip meant to undermine what's happened. So I don't think that either of them should be fired. But in addition to that, I don't believe that either of them understand the weight of their words. I could understand why they don't, due to the circumstances which they find themselves in, and the way that they probably perceive that those unnecessary attacks. And instead of hoping for something bad to happen to them, or to demand an apology, we should hope they understand where we are coming from, and demand them to not fuck up again.
Wow. Never. Y'all will never do that again.
I want to let you know that there is a definitive blueprint that you can follow to achieve success, prosperity, longevity, and peace of mind. It's a blueprint, and I followed it my whole career. It's very simple. There's three things you just do. These three things. Pay your taxes, mind your business, and keep Will Smith's wife's name out your fucking mouth!
Throughout this week, the entire Western New York community, NFL family, and people from around the world have been praying for Damar Hamlin. Damar's amazing recovery has lifted our collective spirits, and we are forever grateful for the love and support Damar's family and friends and our organization have received. Today, we celebrate Damar's recovery, our love for Damar, and our gratitude. Please rise and show your support as only Bills Mafia can.